Good day, everyone. Today I wanted to talk to you about setting up a Jet Analytics, just showing how we can do this on a Business Central or NAV database. The reason for doing this is, of course, getting into BI, Power BI as fast as possible, and then managing the project from there. So let me get started on this. First thing I need to do is download the software. I can find that on the insightsoftware.com/downloads page. I can find it through Google, and here I can find the download for Jet Analytics and the download for Jet Reports. I can download prior builds. It's going to ask for a product key. If I'm going to prior builds, download Jet Analytics, I can download straight away, but I will need a product key or a demo license to start using the product. I went through the liberty of already downloading it, and I got it in my download folders, got the latest version here, and I am gonna extract it so I can install it from here. In here I got the first folder called Jet Analytics. I got the 64-bit data manager server, and I'm just gonna go through the Jet Analytics setup. I can scroll through all of this, and then I have read the agreement. I agree, and the installation will start. There we go. That should be it for the first installation. Software should be installed, and we can start opening it up and see what we got here. We got a splash screen, and as I said, they're asking for a license key here. Maybe you have one. If you don't have one, you can request a demo license at your partner. And if you have that license, you can plug it in there and activate the product. There we go. It says to me this is a demo license I'm using, of course. It detects a previous version installed. I'm gonna skip that. I can say no. I'll create my own stuff. I'm gonna disable the ODX server. We're gonna do a simple, straightforward installation with a staging and a data warehouse. It asks me for a database where I can save my projects. So this is a database that will store all the information about my product. I'm just gonna go ahead and create a new one with the default name called project repository. There we go. And it'll create a little database on that SQL server. So I will need a SQL server behind this, of course, to do this. But we're gonna need some SQL, some sort of SQL anyway for our staging and data warehouse. So what can I do now? I could create a project from scratch, create a new project, but I am gonna go ahead and get one of the Cube Store projects. These are our default projects that are created by Insight Software, just to get going fast. A lot of the standard tables that we will recognize, like value entry and customer tables, will be already selected. So this can get us going into the front-end BI solution as fast as possible. So in this case, I will be picking, I got a BC database ready to go. So I got a BC on-premise. I could use BC public cloud. At this moment, I think we have about 10 ways of connecting to NAV or BC, depending on the version you're on, depending if you're on-prem, public cloud. So I'm gonna go with the SQL on-prem for this one. And this one works for Business Central as well as NAV 2013 through 2018. So I'm gonna download this package and gonna import this project into my project repository. So as soon as I get here, I have to make the remark, we make these projects with cubes as well as tabular models. And it's your prerogative to pick whichever one you prefer. These days, especially when going for Power BI, we prefer tabular. Power BI works a lot better with tabular. And moving forward, I also think that is the better solution. So we got this SSAS multidimensional, which we can ignore later on. What this is a project pre-created by one of my colleagues, and he connected it to his database, created his staging, created his data warehouse, so we can change all these properties. So the first thing I'm going to change here is this SQL nav adapter. It's still called an app adapter, but it also works for the BC on-prem databases. I can search for my BC database, and I got a nice BC database here. Test the connection to it, and then press OK. It'll ask me to synchronize straight away. I will do that now. What that will do is we'll just check into this database, I'll look at my companies and look at the data there, especially the data structure, whether it matches with this project and how well it matches. So let me run through this. This all looks fine. It asks me to synchronize the accounts. Accounts are the companies within my NAV or BC, so let's do that. And it basically tells me this project was built on a database with 3 companies, and I only have 2 with different names. So it replaced those. It gives me the opportunity to check the companies I want to use in my BI solution. There we go. And at this point, it's reading the data structure and see how well it matches with the data structure we have in this pre-built project. Because, of course, there are some version differences, especially this one is built on, I think, even a newer BC than mine. And I'm running on a bit of an older BC on that. So even that, it's going to check whether all the field lengths are the same. So I got tables updated there. And I'm only interested in the fields used by my BI project. So I'm going to check that. And then I'm going to quickly run through these. And you can see, yeah, the currency table. A lot of them have been renamed. As you can see, it has this GUID or this little identifier behind it to identify the extension or whether it's a base table. So that has changed. On some of these, I see there are some extra field changes. For example, I got an old value on the name for the location, which was only 50 long. Apparently in my database, it's 100 long. So all of this is fairly straightforward. When we do this on a live database, don't forget, check every single one of these. Most of them will have little to no impact, but be sure to check all of these, whether they can have an impact on your BI. So I'm going to close this up. That one worked great. I'm gonna define a staging database, and I'm going to rename this to the BC staging. There we go, BC stage. Let's create this. There we go. And I'm going to do the same for the data warehouse. Rename this to BC. And then go ahead and create this one. I'm going to test the connections. All of them turn green, which is great. I didn't even check the OLAP. I'm not going to use that one anyway. So I can close this wizard up. On the left here, I got my semantic layer with my standard OLAP cubes. Underneath, you can see the 6 cubes, and we have them matched in the 6 semantic models. So whichever one you prefer, you can delete the other one, you can leave it. I'm going to delete the OLAP so it doesn't bother me while I'm deploying or executing, or I'm not confused as to which one I'm using on this project. So I'm going to delete this one. I can just delete it like that. Next thing I'm going to do is have a quick look at the setup. So let me have a look at the business unit. I'm going to put the data warehouse next to it. So here I got my business unit, and I can see on the data source, my data source is still called NAV. I'm going to fix that. And I can also see that this table name has the NAV in there and the database scheme name. So I'm going to create a separate scheme specifically for my BC. So I'm going to call that BC. Make sure I have that deployed. I'm going to by deploying, I'm basically going to create a scheme. There we go. I can enter that in the versioning. So once I created that scheme, I'm going to rename these tables and I'm going to do it all from the data source. So on the data source properties, I'm going to start off with the data source settings. And I'm going to give the default scheme, give it to BC for the default scheme. There we go. And then on the table prefix, it says prefix tables automatically. I am not going to prefix them. I'm all going to put them on a different scheme, so they're nice and safe there. I don't have to have this prefix on every single table. I think that makes the staging look a lot neater. So that means it's going to have to change a lot of coding, a lot of tables behind the scenes. And as you can see, that can take a couple of seconds, maybe a minute, depending on how large this project already is. But I think this, we can all agree that this looks a lot more legible. Last thing I can do here is rename this data source. All the data is going to be tagged with this data source name, so it's nice to have it neat and distinguishable. There we go. So I think I'm ready to go to deploy all of this. I'm going to do this in stages. So what I usually do first time is I'm going to go ahead and look for a simple table like the country region table. Very simple table. Not a lot of data in there, but just going to look if I can deploy and execute it. If anything is wrong, maybe some user rights, or maybe I forgot to create a database, that's just going to go in error straight away, and I can double check it. Anyway, if this works, it looks like it deploys without a problem and it executes without a problem. I can go into that table, and actually from the data manager, I can right click it and preview the table. I can see it's neatly filled up with the DW account. As I said, that's the company name and the companies next to it. So that looked great. And I'm more confident to do this entire staging database. So before I do that, I have a multi-threaded machine here. I can set up multiple threads. So I'm going to enable that in this project on the default execution package, update default here. I'm going to put this onto 4 threads, and that'll just makes execution a lot faster on this machine. So I'm going to start executing this. So I'm going to deploy and execute this. This will mean it'll start creating the objects in SQL. Before I do that, I'll jump into SQL for a second and see where my databases are. So I got my BC staging here, and as you can see, it has almost no tables except for the country region tables I just tested. So if I start deploying and executing this, it's going to first deploy this, which is create all the objects, create all the tables, prepare the packages, ready to go. And afterwards, it's going to execute, which is going to fill up the data. And execute is also, of course, the progress or the process we are going to set up to do on a scheduled basis. This could be every day, every hour, maybe every 10 minutes for some parts, just to get going. It already started executing. I'll skip forward in this a bit, so you don't have to wait for it in the video, of course. This demo database isn't the biggest database, so you can see I ran through this entire deployment and execution in less than 2 minutes. And if I were to look in my SQL database now, you'd see I have a lot of objects in there, and they're all properly filled in with my up-to-date data. So if I preview the customer table, for example, I will see my customers are all in there. If I'm jump to, for example, something like the value entry table, I can preview the table. I can also count the rows on there, and you'll see I'll only have a couple of 100,000 in there. So as I said, not the biggest database, but the speed, of course, is fairly linear to that. Okay, let me do the same for the data warehouse. So the next step in our deployment, I'm doing the data warehouse. I could do both of these at once. I won't speed it up anyway, so I like to do them separately, especially the first time. Maybe the staging worked out, but the data warehouse didn't because, again, you forgot to create it or some user right is wrong. Data warehouse is going to go a lot faster because it's a smaller database. It's basically your data distilled, so it's just a part of your data that goes to the data warehouse, and it's also all the cleanup, all the transformations are already done. So there we go, half a minute for deployment and about 15 seconds to get all the data over. Again, I'm checking one of these tables. Sales posted transactions is a neatly grouped table. It has about 7 or 8 tables from NAV in there or BC in there. I can preview this table, count the rows, have about 260,000 rows on that. And you can see it's neatly filled up. So the last step in this progress before we can jump to the front end is our data model. And As I've already told you, I'm going to demonstrate Power BI, so I'm going to use tabular models. And I'm picking the sales data tabular model. It's a very straightforward model. Most people understand what's in there. You got some sales, you got customers, you got some item information in there. So that's always very convenient to demonstrate. Let me get started. The first thing I need to do, I need to add a server to deploy this to. This is an analysis services tabular endpoint. That could be Azure Analysis Services or could be SQL Server Analysis Services. So I got SSAS on this machine, so I'm going to do this locally on this machine. And I'm calling this my Jet Sales tabular model. Calling this Jet Sales. Finding a data server. I think I can just put it to the local machine there and put it to my Jet Sales. I'll test the connection, just a second. There we go. Looks good. I'm going to deploy and execute this single tabular model. If I want all 6 tabular models, I just have to add an endpoint to all 6 of them, or add an endpoint to the others, deploy and execute them individually. Took about 15 seconds on this machine. After that, let's load up Power BI. And I'm gonna load up Excel as well while we're at it. There we go, Excel pops open. Power BI is loading. And we got Power BI up and running as well. I'll skip the registration for a second, and I'm gonna just jump into get data and get data from analysis services. And this allows me to connect to the machine or the database I had earlier. I'm all on localhost, so I can use the little dot or localhost. And here I got this this simple sales model that I deployed and executed just earlier. So as you can see, I got a model up here, and this is our standard model. Nothing has been added to that. You can get this up and running on a demo machine like this in less than 10 minutes. And let's see what we have here. So I'll put up a stacked column chart, and I'll start with the sales posted transactions, put in the sales in there, which is basically my entire turnover on there, and then split that turnover by year, maybe even make it quarters. And now let's put the company in the legend. There we go. I see I got some blank data here. I think that's a bit older. Maybe I have to put my date table across that. It doesn't really matter that much. You see that this is working. So I'll continue this a bit. Let's put the profit per salesperson on there. If I don't really know where to find the salesperson, I can enter that. And you would see that in our standard model, we actually have 3 salespersons, one from the document, and then from the bill to customer or the sell to customer. So let's pull the bill to customer salesperson on there. And then let's make a slicer per country. And a little pivot table on there. So we can do some item properties, maybe some sales and profit per item category. Per item category. So that looks like our Power BI solution is working here. And this is the point where we dive into and we start looking, what do we need extra on this to make this BI solution work for this specific project? And we use the data manager to easily add fields, add extra calculations to that, add extra data sources when needed. The most important part to illustrate in this video is to just show you that you can get this up and running in basically a couple of minutes. If it's on a big database, take a couple of hours, and you got this standard system set up. You got the base data models that are good to go. Got all your live data in there, and then you can start changing your project from the data manager. So that was it for today. Good luck and see you next time.